We started this course by reading David Orr's What is Education For? In that, he states that all education is environmental education. At first, I wasn't sure what that meant. As the article continues, I learned that students learn the importance of things by the way they're included or excluded. We send a message when we don't teach it. By not directly teaching environmental ed, we are saying that it's unimportant. This made me stop and think about how I could change this as an educator. What can I do to be an environmental educator myself? Progressing through the course, we then looked at eco-literacy. This was my first step to being an environmental educator. I must become eco-literate myself. I've come to believe that there are two different ways to be eco-literate. Being educated on the environment and environmental issues, but also being connected. In my second journal entry, I focus on the human destruction through invasion and pollution to the diversity of ecosystems in the environment. By looking back, I see that I was focused on eco-literacy as knowledge. As I move forward in my journal, I see the change in my understanding of eco-literacy. After reading the Canoe Pedagogy, I really realized that there is much more to environmental education. The Canoe Pedagogy is taking environmental education to teach about Canadian history, colonialism, and empathy through this connection with nature. So where do I stand? I feel like I'm someone who spends a significant amount of time outside, but I did not know a lot about issues. I did not know much because I was afraid to know. After conferencing and learning about the different issues surrounding us, I felt drained. How do I fix this? During my action learning process, I was confronted with this fear and used it to change things in my life. For my part, I looked at waste. I started using less waste and took that into a bigger context by taking it to my hometown school. After this, every time that I use a plastic bag or plastic wrap, I feel so guilty. So then, by confronting this fear, learning about issues, I have gained awareness. My journal entry about awareness represents the working wheels of my awareness that are now turning. I'm looking more closely at my actions in my everyday life and how they are affecting the environment. I'm thinking about it all the time. So am I an environmentalist? At first I thought no, but then we reevaluated the definition of what it meant to be an environmentalist. We had a stereotype of tree huggers and hippies, and that was my first interpretation. As I think about it, I think being an environmentalist can be simple. In my journal, I picked 3 titles for being an environmentalist: knowledge, connection, and caring. I talked about knowledge and connection with eco-literacy. I think becoming eco-literate and using that knowledge to care about the environment, to take action, you are on a journey to being an environmentalist. How can I take this new knowledge into my future classroom? As Capper said in his article, children must not only understand ecology, but experience it in nature. Educators must take children from being passive learners to active learners. I was so inspired by listening to Morgan Beta and seeing this in a real classroom. I want my students to explore nature with their own 2 hands. One quote that resonates with me from the Coyote and Raven reading is, "Are we born old, filled with knowledge and experience, and spend our lives filled with ignorance?" So by going back to David Orr's article, by not teaching environmental education, we are allowing ignorance. I want to teach environmental education to my students, teach them to love and cherish rather than ignore. I enjoyed wrapping up this class by planning a lesson for environmental education. I was able to take what I learned and see how I can put it to use in my future classroom. I'm passionate about being an environmental educator, and I want to pass this passion on to my students.